Hey guys, welcome to the first video on this new series on building an instant messaging application or some kind of chatting application using C#. So basically, before I start, let me first just discuss briefly why this is in its own series and things like that. So I was contemplating putting this into the WCF series. Now, I decided not to put it into the WCF series for a couple reasons. The first reason is because this series or building this application is going to be fairly long. Depending on how many features we want to put into it, like friends lists, user accounts, stuff like that. Every new feature that we want to put in adds to the duration of how long this will be. So basically, I'm going to be splitting each kind of feature into separate parts, and each part will target a certain kind of aspect of the application. I also, because of this, I was thinking, this is not really a video on WCF. Rather, this is a video that utilizes WCF and also utilizes the rest of the C# programming language and programming in general to create a real-world type of application. It's not a WCF application. WCF just allows us to build real-world applications because real-world applications use technologies to communicate over the internet. That's what basically the majority of programs do these days. Not a lot of programs are just standalone programs that you don't need an internet connection to use. Lots of them are designed to interact with other clients around the world to create some kind of social platform. So because of that, I was thinking, I should really I should create videos that help people build real-world applications. I'm already making videos that teach certain topics, but seeing a topic and learning one topic and maybe learning another topic, that's good, but the hard part is being able to combine those together to create an application, a real-world application. So that's what I want to do in these videos. They're going to be separated into different series, but these series are going to be based off of building real-world applications. The first one we're going to do is obviously building this chatting application or instant messaging application, and this can go as complex as be as complex as we want. We can have friends lists, private messaging, like similar to Skype, creating user accounts, signing in, all those things. And we can add all those if we want. And then we can do other things, like we can make, maybe for another series, creating some kind of business management software so that people can learn how to do that, and then build some business management software for other people in the world. A lot of small businesses are still using paper. A lot of companies actually, or a lot of small businesses use paper. And being able to take this knowledge and build business management applications stuff like that, that's what I want to show you guys. I want to show you what all of this programming learning, what does it pay off, and what's the purpose of learning all of this? Learning everything in the segments, like all the tutorials on the internet are designed. Everything's designed for segments. For example, people make videos. Okay, this is the if statement. Okay, then another video. This is the switch statement. Then another video. This is a for loop. So they split them all up, but it's hard for a beginner programming or beginner programmer to be able to put them all together and say, okay, I want to create this, but what do I need to use? Should I use an if statement or a switch statement? That's sort of a challenging part of this. So that's what I want to try to do. Create videos for creating whole applications so that if you start from the beginning of my video but to the end of the video, you'll be able to have a running and working application for and actually a practical application that is important to add on. So yeah, we are starting with an instant messaging application because why? It's just cool. Being able to program and to create your own program to communicate with other people around the world is very empowering. So one thing I want to add to this before we actually get started is creating applications that are complete and ready for ready to be used by other people It's a big task. There's lots of things to do, lots of things to fix, lots of things to make sure are in the program that always ensure reliability of the application and things like that. So while we are going to be building full applications that work, we are not building programs that you can just take from me and then release to the world. They're not going to be like that. And what I mean by that is I'm not going to be this is all for time's sake, by the way. I'm not going to be going in and making sure that something works in every type of situation. I'm going to be going in and making something work for, the majority of situations. But, being able to program an application is being able to program an application that works in all types of situations. And let me give you an example for this. So in this application, building an instant messaging program, we're going to run into some kind of problem down the road. And basically the problem is, and I'm just going to pass the problem by saying I'm assuming that this doesn't happen. Basically the problem is, inside this application, the client is going to be communicating with the server, and the server is going to be communicating with the clients to create some kind of instant messaging program. But what happens when the server thinks that one of the clients are live, but they're really dead? And what I mean by that is, what if a client loses internet connection? Someone unplugs them from their router, or they have no internet anymore. In those cases, the server has to basically be notified about this, and it has to take actions to make sure that the server stability is okay. And basically, if someone loses internet connection and the server doesn't see that right away or is not ready for that, if a client tries to communicate with that client that is disconnected but the server doesn't know yet, the server can run into problems. The server can freeze. If you're a single-threaded server, it's going to freeze. I mean, if you're a multi-threaded server, then you'll be able to do something, but you're going to waste threads, making them sit there idle until this client disconnects. And we're going to talk about this in the future, but basically, there are going to be problems that require deeper programming to fix, and I most likely will not go into all of them because it will just take too long. So what I would do, I would just say, okay, in that situation, I'm going to assume that everyone is always connected, and this is how it would work. If you want to go to the next step and say, okay, what happens if he disconnects? I need to do this, and I'm going to point you obviously in the direction when we get up to that step, so you don't have to be worried. We are going to be building full applications. It's just small things like that where we don't have the time to go into everything. But I will go into some things that I think are important. Don't worry about that. For example, I will go into something like, let's say we're sending a message to a client, but when the client is connected, we want them to actually get the message. But when they're disconnected or not logged on, or maybe they were logged on and then they crashed, what do we do with that message now? Do we just lose that message and it will never ever be delivered to them? Or should we store that message into a database, and then when the client logs in, he'll query and say, do I have any messages that weren't delivered to me? Now, can I get them now? And things like that. So we'll look at things like that. Obviously, that's a crucial thing to building an application. Okay, so with that all aside, let's go ahead and start trying to build this application. So I'm going to use the same setup that I did for the first video in the WCF series. Inside the WCF series, I created a client and interfaces project, which is for the shared stuff like the service contract, stuff like that, and then the actual service itself. So we're going to be following that same pattern here for this application. Now, I want to just mention one more thing about the WCF series. The WCF series is on WCF. This is not on WCF, but you can learn WCF by watching this. Inside of anything you see in this video that utilizes WCF, I will cover in a separate video eventually over time in the WCF series video. And I will be covering more things in WCF series that I will not cover in this. So I just want everyone to understand the WCF series is for WCF learning the things of WCF. This is utilizing WCF to create an application. So you're going to see things that I have not covered yet, but I will cover in the WCF series over time. So for our client application, we're going to use a WPF application. If you aren't familiar with WPF, it is very similar to Windows Forms. Basically, WPF is Windows Forms, but it has this added layer that allows us to create graphically enhanced programs. WPF utilizes a programming language called XAML, or XAML, which is basically an extension of XML. And it's basically it can be used for a lot of things, but it's basically for the graphics aspect, it's basically a graphical markup language that we can use. It's very similar to like when if you're building a website, how HTML is to the web page, XAML is to a WPF application. So we'll look at that, but for the most part, we'll try to abstract away from that and not actually write XAML code by using other programs. We're going to use a program called Microsoft Expression Blend, which allows us to create an application by using drag and drop and things like that, and it will do the XAML code for us behind the scenes. Visual Studio also has an editor for doing this, and we'll look at that in a second, but Expression Blend is a lot better for creating animations and stuff like that. I am most likely eventually going to also do a video series on WPF and XAML, but I have so many video series to make, so I'll be making videos for a long, long time. But eventually, down the road, one day I will do stuff like that. Maybe I'll definitely do Windows Phone, Windows 8. There's so many things I'm going to create over time. But yeah, so let's get started and let's create this entire solution. First, by creating the client application. So the client application, I'm just going to call, I don't know. I'll just call it chatting application. Actually, I'll just call it chatting client. And the solution name is going to be called chatting application. And it's going to be a WPF application. This is our client. So as you see, everything's getting loaded up. This is WPF. As you can see, down below, we have our XAML editor, which you can change where it's located and stuff. But this is our XAML code that is used to define this page, this application. We have our toolbox to our side, similar to Windows Form, where we have this drag and drop functionality. And when we drag stuff onto it and move it, it's actually doing the XAML code for us behind the scenes. And if I ever do a XAML series, we'll look at what all these things mean and what they represent. Throughout the series, if I do edit the actual XAML code, just copy it, because I'm most likely not going to explain it in detail. So yeah, I can drag stuff onto my application like this, and that's it. So this is what we're going to use to build our application, our client application. So I guess the first thing we could do is kind of just sort of lay out the client before we start writing the server's code and everything like that. Basically, in this part, all I want to do is just create the general functionality of creating an instant messaging program. Being able to have two clients send a message to each other in a sort of a group fashion, meaning anyone who is connected to the service will all get the same messages. We are not going to be implementing private messaging at all yet, though that will come into later videos when we create friends lists and stuff like that. Also, I'm not going to be focusing on graphics too much. I'm going to be dragging and dropping controls on. I'm not going to be really editing colors at all or doing anything like that. That is all up to the designer and the programmer when they're building their own application, of how they want the application to look like and things like that. I will not be focusing on that in this series. So let's go ahead and delete this button. So whenever I do editing, for the most part, I'm going to do it into an expression blend. It's just easier to use, and it looks nicer and things like that. Now, I think it's I don't know if this is only with Visual Studio 2013, but if you right click on your application, there's actually a button. There should be a button. Maybe there isn't a button. I thought there was a button. Wait, maybe. I swore there's a button. Maybe that's in Expression Blend. I thought there was a button that you can click and open up in Expression Blend. There probably is. So if someone knows where this button is, please let me know. Okay, I'm not gonna waste time looking for it right now. So instead, I'm just gonna open up Expression Blend, and I'm going to just load up the project into that. Okay, so I have the program opened up in Expression Blend. It's very similar. We have our Solution Explorer over here. We can see all our files, and then things are scattered around. I had to resize things because of just the resolution problems with recording. But inside of here, we have a tab called Assets. And inside of here, this is where our controls are located and things like that. You can see a button I can just drag on, just like how we were in Visual Studio. And there's other things, triggers, which we'll talk about eventually, storyboards for creating animations. Our properties are over here that we can use for coloring, stuff like that. Everything that we need is in here for creating an WPF application. So how we're going to do this is basically, in time we'll create like user login systems, and in time we'll creating accounts. But in this, it's just gonna be a single application thing. So on the top we'll have where they'll type in like their username, and then they'll hit like login, and then down here will be the actual chatting portion of it. I'm not gonna deal with. Should I deal with the resizing and stuff? Right now I'm not, but maybe at the end of the video I'll show you how we can like resize the window, and the chat will automatically resize and stuff like that. But yeah, so let's just go ahead and sort of lay that out. So basically, I wish I could have better sizing here. So basically, I need a button, a text box, this is going to be for the actual logging in portion, so we can know who's going to be typing and stuff like that. I don't really care how it looks. Wow, this resolution is really annoying. So we'll just say log in. This will have no text. And then we'll give these names. So this will be the username. We'll say username text box. And this will be the login button. So those are our first two things. We gave them each names. The name is what we can use to access it in code, if you did not know that. So once we log in, that's going to be it. Now we need some way to actually display the messages. There's a lot of ways we can do this. I might show other ways over time once again, but I guess we can. Yeah, we'll use a list box for now. Actually, I don't know. Is that the best thing? Maybe a rich text box. And let's try rich text box. We'll use. If not, we can change it anytime we want. And so many things can happen. There's so many ways to do this also. But we'll use a rich text box for now. This will represent the text that people are typing and things like that. So this will be our message. I don't know. This will be our text area. What should we call it? We'll call it our text display rich text box. which we probably are going to change it from a rich text box to something else, but whatever. And then the last things we need are another text box and a button, so I'll just copy those and do some renaming here. So this is going to be over here. This will be like send, to actually send the message. And then this will be where you type in your message that you want to send. So this will be our message text box, and this will be our send button. So let me change that. Okay, so this is the general layout for our application. This is where the stuff is going to be displayed, like Jesse said, Tom said, whatever. This is where I'll actually type in the message to send, and then the send button, I'm going to click that and I'm going to mark it is default, and basically what that does allows us to make that whenever we press enter, that's what the button will do. So if I type a message and then press enter, it will send the message. I guess we could also add a label over here. So once we sign in, we'll get like a little, we'll just make it say like welcome and then whatever you typed in. So this will be our welcome label, and this is going to be like welcome Jesse, whatever, something like that. And we can mess with that. We can make it a little bit bigger. Whatever, it's staying black. Hey, so that'll be our little welcome message over here. So that's going to be our client for this part of the video. So now I'm just going to switch back to Visual Studio, and now it's going to say, I want to say yes to all, and there's my interface loaded in. And as you can see, all the XAML code required to create this was done for us. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create another project, and this is going to be the project for the actual server. So I'm going to call this chatting server, and it's going to be a console application. I'm going to hit OK. So there's my chatting server. I'm going to then create one more project. This project is going to be for the interfaces, and this is going to be a class library, and this is going to be called chatting interfaces. And then I'm going to delete that class because we don't need that. So now for the chatting server, I'm going to create or add to the project. To the project. I'm going to add a new item, and this is going to be a WCF service. And I'm going to call this my chatting service. Hit add, and now this creates my service contract and my service implementation. It has a function called do work, and I'm just going to remove that because we don't need either of that. Now, just like my other videos, I'm going to move my service contract to my interfaces by just moving that like that and then deleting it in my chatting server. It's the same thing we did. Yes, there are dogs barking outside right now. Sorry about that. And then we just have to change a couple things. We first need to add a reference into this to service model, system.service model. And I'm going to change the namespace to chatting interfaces. Then for the server, I'm going to add a reference to the actual chatting interfaces so that now the service implementation can work. We'll just have to right click and resolve that. So now we should be all set up. Now, if you did not watch my WCF series on this, then you might be lost. So I would definitely recommend having some WCF experience before doing these videos. Basically, if you have no idea what WCF, I definitely recommend looking at it because then you're probably lost right now. You probably don't even know what WCF is. But yeah, so basically, I broke it up into this chatting interfaces and this chatting server. The reason why I broke it up is because I want the client to be able to have access to the actual service contract. And basically, by doing that, it allows my client to know what operations it is allowed to call on the service. Without that, it would not have any knowledge of what the service can do unless we implemented some kind of metadata exchange. But I do not want to do that because I do not like doing that. I have a video on metadata exchange if you are interested in that, though. Yeah, so I split it up so that the client can have access to that. I'm also going to have other things inside the interfaces that the client is going to have access to. So that's why I want it like this. It's easier to split it up because I own both the client and the service. I don't have to worry about anything else. So obviously, before we really dive in, I want to make sure that everything is working in the application and that we can communicate with the service properly. But before I can do that, I want to set some options up that you probably have not seen. Maybe you've seen one of them, but you have not seen both of these yet. And I'm going to be talking about some other things. I also need to set up the app config files still, so we'll do that here in a second. The first thing I want to do, however, is for my service implementation. Let me delete. I'm going to add a service behavior. And by adding the service behavior, it allows me to do a couple things. So let me just copy this in. So this service behavior is what we're going to use for our application. We already have a video on instance context mode where we took a look at the different options where we have single, per call, and per session. We're going to be using single in this. Basically, we only want one instance of the service, and all of them are going to share that. The reason I want that is because I want to hold a list of all the clients in one instance so that everyone has access to who is connected to the service. That's why I want to do that. And then we also have this another thing called concurrency mode, which you have not seen yet. And basically there is three options: multiple, reentrant, and single. And each of them are different, but we're going to be using multiple, basically saying that it's basically just saying we have a multi-threaded server. If we have incoming calls from clients, it'll be able to handle multiple people at the same time by spawning new threads or doing whatever it needs to do to make that happen. Single will say there's only one thread, so if multiple people try to connect, it will sit there and wait until it's its turn. Now, it's not as easy to just by saying multiple and then you have a multi-thread server. By having a multi-threaded server, which I talked about today in my actual asynchronous video I did, there's a problem. You have to deal with thread safety, and you have to make sure that everything is thread safe. Because think about it, if we have multiple clients trying to make calls to our service, and try to access a shared resource, we could have some problems. And if you don't understand that, go ahead and take a look at my asynchronous video I did called Basic Thread Safety, which will cover basically all the thread safety that we'll be doing. Actually, I just lied, because we'll most likely use a concurrent collection to handle our clients, just because concurrent collections are built to have thread safety built into it, so we don't have to worry about manually synchronizing. Manually implementing locks and things like that. Okay, so before I actually get the service code running, let's go ahead and just set up the app config file. There's going to be stuff in here. I'm just going to go ahead and delete the service model and then define my own. So let's go ahead and right-click on our app config for our chatting service and hit edit with WCF configuration. So yes, we have to first create a new service. Oh, actually, let me first compile this. Okay, now let's go back. Let's create a new service. Okay, next. Chatting interfaces. Next. So we're going to create a TCP-based communication. I'm not going to explain too much, but This is just a good protocol to use use duplex communication, which we're going to be using, which I'll explain when we get to that. So now let's put our address. So I'm just going to say it's localhost port, I don't know, 9000, and then we'll call it, it's going to be at chatting service, like that. Hit next, and then finished. We can give it a name. We can say, okay, so if I just save that and exit, let's go ahead and see what happened. Yes to all. So it built this little piece right here that we need, and it's using the net TCP binding. We may add in a service configuration, or I mean a binding configuration to, which I haven't talked about in my WCF series yet, but by adding a binding configuration, we can specify some more details about this. So like, timeouts and things like that, which we may get to. But right now, it's just using all default values for all those things. So whatever default values come attached to the net TCP binding, that's what it's using. But obviously, we can override those. For example, a send timeout, we can override, and that's how long it will wait while it sends something before it times out. So all those things we can modify. Okay, so now let's go ahead in our program.cs and sort of start framing out, actually starting up the service. So what we're going to do different here than we did in the other example, from our WCF series, is we're going to create a static instance. This is just for our reference of the chatting service called _server, and this is actually going to be the server, because look at where is it? We have instance context mode to single, so basically there's only going to be one instance of the service. So because of that, we are going to create this instance and then pass it in so that if we ever need to access it, we can. So this is our chatting service instance. Now this is going to be just like what we saw before. So using actually, let's go. So we create a new chatting service. And then, just like in our WCF series, using service host, then we have to resolve that. Using service host equals new service host, and now we're just going to pass in our service that we created. Then inside of here, we're going to say host.open. Then we'll do a little message saying the server is running. And then console.readLine to keep it alive until someone presses enter, and that will close the service. So that is that. Now let's go ahead and do the configuration, the app config for our client by right-clicking at WCF. We're then going to click on client and create a new client. Where we have to navigate to. Wait a second. Let's go to the interfaces bin. Yeah, okay. Next, TCP. The reason why I'm going through this so fast is because we did this all already. What is it called? What did I call it? Chatting. Or I'm just gonna call it. And this is different actually. Chatting. Service and wait. Yeah, I think that's what. No, this is the address. What am I doing? What did I call it? Chatting service? I'll change it if that's not correct. And then I'm going to give a name to it called chatting service endpoint, save, exit. Yeah, the reason why I'm going so fast is because we already did this all. If you don't understand this, you can look in the WCF series. Let me just make sure that this is correct. Chatting service. Okay, that is correct. So this is my configuration file for my client now. So now this is where it's going to get a little tricky. We have not seen this yet in any WCF video that I created. So basically, we're going to be creating a duplex communication. And basically what that means is we want communication from both the client to the service, but then the service to the client. We have not seen this yet, so let me explain it first. So in all the things that we've done in the WCF series, it's always been that the service makes a call, the client makes the call to the service, and then the service can return a value back to the client. But that's it. It's always client to server. But what happens if we want the server to be able to just send calls to a client and say, client, you do this, client, you do that, and do it the opposite way? So how we do that is when the client actually registers and creates the channel and does all its stuff like that, it registers to the service with a callback. And we have to create a callback implementation and callback contract, which we'll look at here in a second. But when we register with that callback to the actual server, we can use that callback to contact the client anytime we want. It basically registers the server with the client's IP address and stuff like that, so that we can at any time just say, I want to contact the service. Oh, and we have an error here. I need to add reference to the here. That should make that go away. Okay. So yeah, that's what a duplex communication is. It allows us to communicate in both directions. And that's what we need to create a client application, because think about how messaging works. The client sends the message to the service, and the service sends the message to the other client or other clients so that they can get the message. That's how it works. So we need that duplex communication. So for this, I'm going to create another service or another contract, if you will. Even though we're not going to be utilizing it just quite yet, but I'm going to create one anyway. So we're going to add a new item to our interfaces called, it's going to be an interface. I'm going to call it, I don't know, I'll call it client, I'll just call it client contract. And I'll just call it iClient for now. Hit add. Now, we're not going to have anything in this contract yet, so we'll just leave that alone. But we need this because we need something in the client itself to register as a callback so that we can now call the client. So as you can see, this is how it works. The client uses iChatting service. That's the service contract, so the client can see what the service has. The service is going to use iClient as its contract so it can see what the client has. But the client needs an implementation for it, which we're going to create now, and the service needs an implementation for its contract, which we have, the chatting service. So this is that contract. So contract, implementation, contract, and now we need a client implementation. It works the same both ways. So to do this, we're going to, inside the client, we're going to create a class called, I don't know, we can say anything. I'm just going to call it client, client callback, whatever. Yeah, that's fine. So we'll have a class called client callback, and once again, we can implement this a behavior. Notice how in this we where is it? We have a service behavior. Now we can implement a callback behavior. I need to add a reference to, I'll just do recent service model. But now we have a callback behavior where we can supply and specify a concurrency mode of multiple here. So this is our client callback, and the last thing we need to implement the iClient interface that is in the interfaces project. So now everything's implemented. We don't have anything to implement yet because the interface is empty. Once we start dealing with that, we'll have more to add back in this. So now we got to go back into our our main window, or this is our chatting application window. And now we need to actually create the channel and create the communication between the client and the server. We did this in the WCF series as well by using the channel factory to create the channel. So inside of the constructor is where I'm going to do this. So I'm just going to right click and hit view code. This is my constructor. So I need a couple of things. The first thing I'm going to create, and I'm going to make this static just so that I can access it from anywhere if I create more windows. And this is going to be my server. So I'm going to say public static. It's called iChatting service. I'm going to call it my server. Let me resolve that. This is going to be my server. And then I need my channel factory. So I'm going to make private static. Now this is where it's going to get a little tricky. I need not just a channel factory. I need a duplex channel factory. This is slightly different than what we saw. This is slightly different than what we saw in the WCF series. In the WCF series, we just used a channel factory. Now we're using a duplex channel factory because we need that communication back and forth. So now let's go ahead and instantiate the channel factory. So we're going to say equals new duplex channel factory. And now we need to pass in our callback. As you can see, the callback instance. So we're going to pass in this new, what do we call it? Client callback. And then we'll just pass in the name to our endpoint just for safe reasons. It was called chatting service endpoint, I believe. I could double check on that. What's the name? Chatting service endpoint, yeah. So that's our channel factory. Oops. Now we need to create the channel and create our server. So server equals channel factory create channel. So now we have our server running. Everything should be connected. So let's go ahead and create a function that we can just call on the server to make sure everything is working properly. So inside of here, I'm just going to add a test button. This is just going to be for communication testing purposes. I'm going to delete it. Oops. I'm going to delete this after I'm done testing. So I'm just going to add the test button. I'm going to double click and this will generate the event handler. So let's go ahead in the iChatting service, let's create a test function. So I'm going to say an operation contract void test, passing in a string, I don't know, value. Now in my implementation, I'm going to implement this interface. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to write to the console the value that's passed in. That's all my test function is going to do. Now I'm just going to restart Visual Studio real fast because I'm not running it as an administrator and I need to do that in order to host the server. So let me do that real quick. Okay, so I restarted it and now I'm running as an administrator, as you can see on the top. And I think I'm about ready to just test out this test function. All I have to do is now, in the main Windows XAML, we have to link that button that we created to test to the actual to actually test the server. So I'm going to say server.test. I'm going to pass in hello world. I just want to make sure that we have a connection and everything's working because there may be a problem that we have to fix. So let's go ahead and let's run these things. I'm going to set both of these to start up. And now I'm going to run it. And we have a problem. Okay, I think I know the problem. I think I forgot something. See, this is what happens. I think inside of my service contract, I need to specify the callback contract. I think that's what it wants. So I'm going to say callback contract equals type of, what is it called? iClient. I think that's what it's looking for. So now let's try that. We still have another problem. And now look at we have another problem. The callback contract iChatting server either does not exist or does not define any operations. So it's saying that we must define one operation in our callback contract. So let's just do that. So inside the contract itself, I'm going to implement, I don't know, this is just a placeholder function. So void, void, wait, we'll just call it placeholder. That is it. And then inside of our implementation, we'll just implement this, and and we'll leave it throw new, because we're not actually going to call this. So this is just a placeholder, because that's what it says we need to run. So let's try that again. Probably going to get, oh, wait, the server is running now. What happened this time? Okay. I am extremely dumb and feel stupid. I have to, this is a contract. I need to make sure I mark this with operation contract also. Okay, so in your service contracts or client contracts, so you have to mark your operation with the operation contract attribute. So now let's try to run this. There we go. So what I want to test here is I want to test clicking the test button, and it should just say hello world in the black box. This is just to make sure that we have communication. That is it. So let's click it, and as you can see, we get hello world in the box. So if I was over some kind of internet connection, and if I lived in the US and you lived in another country, if all the IPs were correct, this would be working right now. So that's what we're doing. We're building a chatting application. So we have the communication. So now that we have that, now we can start having some fun. So let's get ready. Let's close all the windows and just clean this up a little bit. Let's remove this test button. We don't need it anymore. And then we're going to remove this event handler. We're also going to remove this test because we don't need that anymore. And we'll remove from the service implementation also. So the first thing I want to do is I need to create a login operation to store who is logged in currently. And now there's going to be a couple steps with doing that. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a class inside of the service itself to be able to manage and hold the information it needs from the client when we connect. Right now, this is going to be, I think, one thing. Yeah, I think, no, maybe two things. So let's go ahead and create this class. I'm going to call this class connected client. Mark this public. And this is going to have it's going to hold a reference to the callback. So let's say public iClient, resolve that, and we're going to call it our connection. This is our connection back to the client. This is the callback, the callback contract right here. And then, another thing it's going to hold will hold the username of the client. So public string username. This will be the username of the client also. So now that we have that, this is what we're going to use. Our actual service itself is going to be holding references to all of these people that are connected. So we actually need a list or some kind of data structure to manage the connected clients. So I'm going to personally create a dictionary, but my dictionary is going to be special. It's going to be a concurrent dictionary. If I could spell concurrent dictionary. Why can't I add this? Oh, that's why, because I'm pretty sure it's because it's a generic one. Yeah, there we go. Come on. Okay, so this is our concurrent dictionary. Basically, it's just a dictionary that is concurrent, meaning that it's thread safe. Because this is a multi-threaded server, this will just help us remove some of the locking and things that we need to do to handle thread safety. This will just handle some of it, but we'll still have to probably down the road implement our own locking on some other things. This is just with the connected clients. So now we have this data structure right here. This concurrent dictionary is going to manage all the people that are connected to the actual chatting service so that we can use this to communicate with the people on the service. So now we need to create a function that they can call to log into the actual service. So let's say public. I'm going to return an int login, and you need to log in with your username. That is it. The reason why I'm going to return an int is because there's probably down the road eventually there's going to be reasons why we need to have multiple return types so that we can display a message to the client. For example, you are already logged in. That will be a 1. Or you are banned from the chatting server. That's a 2. Or I don't know, messages like that. So we might need multiple messages. So I'm going to use an int to return that, and then the client can interpret that integer to display a message to the client. So that's my login function. Now I'm going to implement this login function like so. So the first thing we need to do is we need to be able to get the actual callback of the client so that we can store that into our new connected client. So to do that, there's a built-in thing called an operation context current, and then we can say get callback client. So I'm going to say var established. This is the established user connection that we have equals the operation context dot current dot get callback channel for iClient. That will get of the current user that's connecting. So the current person that's making the call, whoever's calling login, this will get their callback channel and store it into there. Once we get more into when we create a database, we'll have to use this. We'll have to type in a username and a password. We'll have to check that against the database to log in. But this is a simple example, and that will happen over time. So that's all we need for that. So now we're going to create the actual this new connected client called new client. I'm going to say the new client dot connection is equal to the established connection. So we're storing their callback into this connection. Then we're just going to set the new client username is equal to the username that was passed in. That username is also going to be used as the key for our dictionary because it's going to be unique. Only one person can log in with the same name. So we'll have to do some checking for that, and maybe in this video or the next one, to make sure that no one with the same name logs in, because then we'll have some problems. So now we have that. Now we have to add this person to our into our data structure. So I'm going to say connected clients dot try to add the key, which is the username, and then the connected client value, which is our new client. So now they'll get added in to our collection. We can first let's do it now. Let's make sure that only one person can log into the application with this username. So I guess this would be the first thing we check. We can just say for each var client in the connected clients. I wish I could type. If the client dot key dot to lower, the key is the username, by the way, equals username that's typed in, that too lower. Too lower just makes it too lower so that we can't have any problems. Makes all the characters too lower so we can compare them fine. So that means someone else is logged in with the same username. I'm going to return 1, which means that the client will understand that that means that someone is logged in. So if not, and we make it down to here, if we got added in, which we should be able to get added in easily, then we'll say return 0. That means that we were successfully added in, and that's all we need for a login. So this just checks to make sure, is anyone else logged in with my name? That's what this does. If yes, then we'll return 1. This gets the callback. Then we create this to hold the callback and to hold the user's username into this collection right here called connected clients. We add that to there, and then that's all we need. So now we have the user stored into connected clients. Now, the second function that the server is going to be able to offer is send a message to all. So public void, and these need to be operation contracts. This is going to be send message to all, to everyone. String message, and should I pass in my username? I'm also going to pass in my username of the person who's sending the message. Now, the reason why I want to do this is I want to make sure that I send the message to everyone, but I don't want to send the message to myself, because that's a waste of time. I type the message so I can just put that into the message area, rather than having to wait for it to send it back to me. I could do it either way, but this is more efficient doing it this way, because I know what the message is, so why do I have to wait for it to get back to me from when the server sends it to me? I can just make sure I don't send it to myself. Now, I could make the server figure out who I am, and it can do that, and we will do that eventually, because it can figure out, based off of the callback and this operation context, I can figure out who I am by just calling. I can get my username and everything, so I don't need to pass it in, but this just makes it easier for myself. And over time, we'll need to do that for other things, but this is what I want to do: send message to all, the message, and who is sending the message. Yeah, so this is who is sending the message. Now let's implement this. Now how we're going to do this is, basically what we're going to do is we're just going to iterate over all the people inside of our collection, and then we're just going to pass the message to them if their key is not equal to the username, because that's myself. So I'm going to say, for each var client in the connected clients, if the client.key.toLower is not equal to the username.toLower, because that's me, then I want to send them the message. Now, how do we send them the message? All we do is, actually, before I do that, before I can send them the message, I need to create the ability to send them the message by changing iClient. This is my placeholder function. I want to change this by saying get message. So by saying get message, I'm going to have string message and string username, who sent this message, so I can display this in the output. So this get message, this is a client operation. This is the client operation. So this is the client contract, and I'm saying what can the server call to the client. So I can call get message on the client. So on the client callback, I'm going to implement this called get message, and then we'll have to utilize this here in a second to display the message to that window. We'll look at that here in 1 second. So before we implement this, let's go back and finish the send message to all. So this is what the client calls send message to all. And now I'm just going to go client.value, which is the value in the dictionary rather than the key, the connection dot get message. So I'm saying this client get the message that was passed in from this user. So now I'm basically just forwarding this message to all the clients besides myself. Whatever message was that the client typed in, I'm just going to pass it to everyone else. That's what I'm doing. I'm calling get message on the other clients. So now that we have that, now we need to actually implement what happens when we call get message and we get the message. What should we do with that message? So what we're going to do is we're just going to display the message or who typed it into our rich text box. Now, I need to double check real quick how to interact with our rich text box. I'm pretty sure it's just, it's called message, what is it called? View designer. It's called text display rich text box. I think I can just go is there a text content? What do I have to do I forgot how to do this. Maybe it's better to just use a text box or maybe a list. Hold on, let me double check this. Maybe instead of using a rich text box, let me try just changing this to a regular text box. So I'm just changing it to regular text box by modifying the XAML. And I'm just going to change the name from rich text box to just text box. This may be easier. If not, we could try something else. Yes, now I can just do that. So now to actually to give it the message, I'm going to create a function in here, say public void called take message, and it's going to be the string message and the string username, who it's from. And inside take message, I'm just going to add the message to the output. So it's going to be text display text box dot con. Is it const? No, it's text dot text. I'm going to add to the text saying message. No, I'm going to say username plus a colon space plus the message, and then followed by a \n. I don't know what this will look like. I might have to change this, but whatever. We'll see what it looks like first. So we created this function called take message that just takes in the string username, and then we just concatenate those together with some colons and stuff, and we just put that into the text box. So now back in the client callback, this is where the service calls the client. I need to call that function passing in the stuff. So there's a built-in thing into the application class, I think. We have a class called application. Application.current. Is it this? Yeah, application.current.main window gets the sets or main window of the application. I don't think this text, yeah, it doesn't. So this property gets the main window of the application, so I'm going to just cast this as a main window. This is probably confusing people, but hopefully I'll try to explain it at the end. So now I should have my text display. There we go. So I'm just going to say take message, passing in the message and the username. So basically, let me explain this real fast. Basically, every application for the main window is actually my main window, and there's a property called application.current.main window because I don't have access to the actual main window right now. So this property holds a reference to the main window, but as you can see, the type of it is just type window. So we know it's really a type main window, but all windows derive from window. So we need to first cast it to main window to access the main window stuff, like take message. So this is basic casting. I have videos on this if you don't understand. And then we just dump the message in. So this is what the service calls get message, and then we just dump that into the current main window. Okay. Now we need to set up what happens when we actually type a message and then click send. So let's set up the send button. So what we're gonna do is we're basically just gonna send the message to all, but there's a couple things we need to do. We first need to let's first go server.send message to all, and this is gonna be the text. What is it called? The message. What is it called? Message text box is what it's called. Why is this not showing me? I hate this bug. Message text box. Why is this happening? I need to restart Visual Studio real fast. Okay, let's see. Message text box dot text, and then the username, which is, what is that called? I think it's username text box dot text. So I'm sending the message to all, my username and then the message text box, whatever I typed in. Then I'm going to reset the message text box dot text. Is there a clear? No. So I'm just going to reset the text of that so it's empty for the next message. And then I'm also, actually before I do that, I'm going to call take message. This will just write this into the message window. Because remember, on the actual server, I said don't send the message to myself. So I'm not going to actually get the message myself. So I needed to type in take message to actually display that into it. And I'll comment that out to show you what that looks like. So I think the last thing we need to do before we can test this is set up the login button. So for the login button, we need to just call login. And to do that, we're just going to go server.login. Actually, it takes in an int. So I'm going to say int return value equals server.login. I just need to pass in my username, so that's username textbox.text. And I'm going to say if return value equals 1, what did that mean? That means I was already logged in. So now this is what I'm going to say. I'm going to say message box. If I could type, I can never type in these videos. Message box.show you are already logged in. That's all I need to write. Return, whatever. Actually, I don't need to do that. You are already logged in. That's all I need to write. Actually, so I can say, I don't know, you already logged in. Try again. Yeah. So I'm going to say else if return value equals 0. That means it was a successful login. So I'm just going to say message box.show you logged in. So that's a successful login right there. And if you are successful, I'm just going to disable the text box in the button so you don't log in again. So username text box, what is it? Is disabled or is enabled dot, yeah, is enabled equals false. And then login button is enabled equals false. I think that will work. So that will just disable so you can't log in twice. So now with all this, we should go ahead and try to run this and see what happens. I don't know what's going to happen. Oh, look, we have an error already. Oh, placeholder. What happened to my placeholder? Let's go to iClient. Wait, why is it saying I need a placeholder? Hold on. Oh, I'm stupid. I put an access modifier there. Okay. Oh, I didn't do my welcome message. I'll do that here in a second. So let's log in. Let's open up another client also. Hold on. Let's have 2 clients running. Bin debug. Okay. So I open up another client. So let's log in with Jesse on one. Let's see what happens. You successfully logged in. And let's log in with Bob on the other. So I logged in on both clients. Now let's write the message hi. Let's see what happens because I do not know what's going to happen. And we have an error. Oh no, it worked. There's some lag. Why was that? Well, let's try that again. I think that was just startup lag. Alright, so it looks like it's working. So, hello. We see it on both. Look at one problem we're having. It's saying Jesse for me. Let's fix that. It should say you instead. That would be better. So when we call take, where is it? Oh, this is annoying. View code. When we type it in, we call take message. Instead of passing in my username, let's just pass in the string you. That should look better. So let's do Jesse. Notice how when I log in and it says you logged in, these are disabled, so I can't log in twice. Now if I say hi, I should say, as you can see, it says you now instead of anything else. Let's log in another client. Let's test to see if I log in with Jesse again, what happens. Remember, I added in that check, so it should say you already logged in. Try again. So I didn't log in. If I type this, nothing happens. I need to log in with another username because Jesse's already logged in. So now you logged in. So now I can say, oh, hi, Bob. Click send or enter. So as you can see, it says you for me and then Jesse because I'm Jesse, so it's displaying Jesse on this guy's screen. If I say hi Jesse over here, it's going to say you for me on this one, and then it's going to say Bob over here as Bob. Hi Jesse. So as you can see, we have a basic chatting application going on right now. This is a very basic. There are problems. Look at this. The first problem we ran into. It's not scrolling down automatically. And these are just things that we can fix over time. I don't know if there's a function for that. Let me check. If not, so when I do take message, let's go. Text, display text box. Is there a scroll to end? Scroll to bottom. Scrolls the view to the editing control to the end of the content. Maybe that will work. Let's try that. I'm not sure. Oops, this was running. Server's running. Yeah, as you go now, see now it's scrolling to the end of the content automatically. Okay, so the last thing I want to do, let's just fix this welcome message. And to do this, I'm just going to say if when we were successfully logged in, I'm just going to fix our welcome label. I'm going to say welcome label content equals welcome, and I'm going to add the username textbox.text, and then an exclamation point. So now my welcome message should work. So I type in login, and now login OK. Welcome Jesse. If I logged in with Bob, it will say welcome Bob. Here, let's try that. Login, you logged in, welcome Bob. I can send my message. My message gets sent back and forth. Here's another bug. I can send a message with no text in it. So that would be a simple if statement would fix that. Let's go ahead and do that. So when I type send message, it only sends the message if, let's say, if text box, let's go, if text box, no, if message what is it? Message text box dot text dot length is greater than 0. Actually, we'll say if it's equal to 0, then return and don't do anything. So let's try that. So I press enter, nothing now. F, that works, but you can't send nothing. I can send a space. That's another thing that we could fix, but for now, we can send nothing, so that's good. So this is a really basic application. Let's try this one more time. Let's create 3 clients. Now, by the way, this could be happening over the internet. If I gave you this client code, you could talk to me right now. So Jesse, Bob logged in, and Fred is also with us here today. So Fred's logged in. So let's write a message to everyone. Hello, everyone! Exclamation point, send. Now, the reason why we get that lag here in the beginning is because it's doing all its stuff, and we'll look at that here, not in this part, but in other parts. But once everything is connected and everything's good, we're not going to get any lag. But I can fix that lag problem over time. We will fix that lag problem. So now there'll be no more lag. So hi. So everyone's getting my message. Now Fred's going to talk. Hi, guys. And we see the message. It says you for him. But for everyone else, it says Fred. And Bob. Hi, Fred. And hi, Fred. And Jesse. And as you can see, Bob is sending that message to everyone. So I think that is going to be it for this video. It is pretty long, 1 hour and 16 minutes so far. So this is just part 1. I went extremely fast. This is going to be hard for all people. You should only be doing this if you have some knowledge of programming, a decent knowledge of WCF at least. So yeah, this is just the first part of many more parts to come of making this a better graphical interface, adding user accounts, friends lists, all these cool things to build a chatting application. This is just our first part of it, and all I wanted was just the chatting aspect to work. So I'm going to be building off of this. The source code is not going to be going anywhere, so you do not have to worry about that. If you guys want the source code for this, I can post it. Just let me know if you want that. But yeah, we're going to be building on top of this, so we'll be seeing all this stuff over and over again. So if you're confused now, don't worry. So that is it for this. We got chatting working. And be sure to stay tuned for the next video where we'll go in and make this better and better over time. So thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.